Hey guys, what's up? I'm Erin and welcome back to the channel. So recently I ran across this article going over signs you've moved beyond the middle class, which I actually think is a really interesting topic because when you ask people what bracket they fall into, only 10% of people say they fall into the lower income class bracket, and only 1% of people say they fall into the upper income class bracket. So that means that 89% of people tend to classify themselves as middle class. However, based on research, we know that it's closer to 50% of people who are truly middle class. But most of us tend to think of ourselves as middle class because we tend to look like everyone we surround ourselves with. We tend to have friends who have similar incomes and similar jobs. We live in neighborhoods where our homes probably look pretty similar to our neighbors, or maybe we drive similar cars. So we look around and we say, yeah, I pretty much look like everyone else. And due to the fact that so many people allow lifestyle inflation to continue as they make more money, they end up continuing to live paycheck to paycheck even as they're making a bigger income. So we might not be the best judge of our own situation. So I thought it might be fun to look at what some of these indicators are, saying that perhaps you have moved past middle class, even if it doesn't feel like it. First one on the list, your income is rising fast. I think this one's kind of true, but it definitely depends on what your starting point with your wage was. And yes, we've definitely seen wages increase in the past few years. But for many people, their wage isn't increasing at the rate of inflation, which means while their check is getting larger, it might not necessarily go as far. So I feel like we could amend this one. Maybe if your income is increasing at a pace faster than inflation, maybe you're well on your way to an income that is going to take you out of the middle class. Your household income is more than $130,000 a year. I think for this one, we have to ask what income is considered middle class? Well, broadly, it's defined as an income anywhere from 2/3 to double the median household income in America. As of 2022, the current median household income is about $74,500. So that would mean middle class is those making anywhere from roughly $50,000 to roughly $150,000. That's a pretty broad range, but this quick glance doesn't consider two really important factors, which is your location and your family size. Location plays a huge factor because if you live in a metro area or just a generally more expensive part of the country, you're going to need a higher income to sustain your lifestyle than, say, if you live in a more rural area or a lower cost area of the country. Same with family size. It takes a lesser income to sustain a family of, say, one person versus a family of 5 or 6 people. Once you consider family size, you can see that the middle class income range could extend anywhere from $30,000 a year to $210,000 a year. Generally speaking, about 50% of people do fall into this middle class income range. If you're interested in seeing where your income falls, Pew Research does have a calculator where you can add your income, location, and family size, and they'll let you know if you're in the upper, middle, or lower income bracket based on a little bit more personalized details. I will link the calculator down below in the description box. You aren't worried about healthcare costs. Healthcare costs can be incredibly high and unpredictable. Consider that nearly 40% of people put off medical treatment last year due to costs. And that's an alarmingly high statistic. Copays on medical care can be incredibly high, and out-of-pocket expenses associated with medications and treatments, those can be high as well. Having access to a good, comprehensive medical plan is a game changer for your financial life. Without medical coverage, it's a very real situation that we're all just one medical event away from financial disaster or even bankruptcy. Prior to marrying my husband, I had to purchase medical coverage in the open marketplace. And for me, it was easily $700 or $800 a month for any out-of-pocket expenses and my medical premiums. Once I married my husband, who is an active duty service member, I was able to get on his medical plan, TRICARE, which is absolutely amazing. I think my medical coverage is now $13 a month, and we have no copays ever. This also means that once we got married, I was able to direct more towards savings and investments, so it's a very real thing to say that we will be able to retire earlier simply because we have good comprehensive medical coverage at a very affordable price. And if you are someone who's worried about your out-of-pocket expenses, you want to make sure that you have a fully funded emergency fund, anywhere from that 3 to 6 months, to make sure that you can help cover medical costs should they come up. You enjoy dining out as much as you want, or you don't worry about small purchases. To a degree, I think this can be true, but I don't necessarily think this is representative of people who've moved beyond middle class and into that wealthy status. Because study after study show that even millionaires are incredibly careful with their spending, with 94% of them saying they follow a budget, and a study from Ramsey Solutions saying that the typical millionaire spends around $200 per month at restaurants, and often uses coupons to bring their bill down, whereas the typical non-millionaire actually racks up more in restaurant spending. And it's safe to say that those who have reached millionaire status are on far more of a stable financial footing than your typical American. I think it's actually a pretty common misconception that those who have money are more frivolous with their spending. I actually think the opposite is true. It's those who achieve this wealthy status do so because they're more diligent with their dollars. So they're probably not eating out every single day or spending unnecessarily on small purchases, because those things add up. So whether you are currently middle class or you've advanced past that, I think it's important to be wise with your spending habits, because many of the people who have advanced past middle class have done so because they have good spending habits. You buy the brand names. Again, I think this one kind of falls into that same category. It's assuming that those who've reached a wealthier point in life tend to not care about their dollars, and I certainly don't think that's the case, because there are many off-brands or store brands that are the equivalent of major brand names in terms of their quality or their value, but they simply come with a lower price tag. For instance, look at Costco's Kirkland brand. Many of their coffees are actually roasted by Starbucks, their batteries are made by Duracell, many of their alcohols are made by major brand name alcohol manufacturers, their diapers are made by Huggies, the list goes on. So if there's a product that's basically brandless or a store brand, but it provides great value, why would you pay more just for a major brand name? I think most people care about the value they're getting for their dollars, especially people who are focused on building wealth. So whether you're in the middle class or moved beyond it, I don't think buying a brand name is indicative of anything of that sort. You don't carry any debt. There's no doubt about it. The heavier your debt burden, the harder it is to get ahead financially. You're constantly having to pay others rather than being able to save and invest for your own future. And the fact of the matter is, most Americans have debt of some type, whether that is a mortgage, an auto loan, or personal debt. And having no debt is a huge flex and puts you in a great position financially. It means when your paycheck comes in, it is yours to spend or save as you see fit. So I would definitely say that having no debt whatsoever puts you in a great financial position and definitely gets you beyond that middle class lifestyle. You're not very worried about financial downturns. I think this one really depends on how you look at it. When it comes to a financial downturn, one of the most important things you can do is to keep your job, to keep your income source. But if we're looking at this from the perspective of investments, I think that speaks really more to risk tolerance than it does your socioeconomic status. Because when it comes to investing, we want to take a long-term approach. Yes, you want to make sure you have a fully funded emergency fund, so you have that cash at the ready should an emergency pop up, and maybe you have mid-range goals. Maybe you're saving up for a car or a house, money you might need in the next handful of years. You can invest that a little bit more conservatively, but you don't want its value to fluctuate greatly because you still want to make sure that money is there when you actually need it. Then we have our long-term investments, money you don't need for the next 8, 9, 10 years or more. This money gets invested a bit more aggressively, and it's understandable that when you invest more aggressively, that the value of a portfolio is going to fluctuate a bit more with market fluctuations. This is just what happens. But at the end of the day, you just want to make sure when it comes to building a portfolio, you're building a portfolio that aligns with your risk tolerance. You're saving for college. And this could certainly be a great indicator. This means you have spare funds. It means you've moved beyond living paycheck to paycheck. Ideally, you're setting aside money for your own retirement, and then you have some spare funds that you can set aside for your kiddos and their future. You're helping the next generation. You're helping them not start out their life in debt. So while I think that list is okay, I don't think it's perfect. So if I were to give my 2 cents on what I think it would look like if you've moved past middle class or you're doing well with finances, here's what I would say. You save more than 15% of your income. I think hitting that 10 to 15% savings and investing threshold is something that everyone should be aiming for. But we all know that most people save far less than this. But I think if you can get your saving and your investing rate past 15%, I think that's a sign that you're in a really good financial position. You don't carry any debt, except maybe a mortgage. I think having a really good handle on your debt, or very little debt to speak of, means you are in a very good financial position. I tend not to include the mortgage here because a lot of people locked in very favorable mortgage rates, like 2 or 3%, and because their rates are so low, they have very little incentive to pay that mortgage off early. But it's alarming that almost 55% of credit card users carry a balance from month to month. And most people can't afford to buy a car without an auto loan. So if you're able to get through life without any debt except a mortgage, I think that's a really great sign. You have a fully funded emergency fund. We've all seen those stats that almost 60% of Americans can't afford a $1,000 emergency. So if you have a well-funded emergency fund and you can handle whatever unexpected expenses life throws your way without having to resort to debt, I think that's a good sign that you've probably moved past the middle class. You don't live paycheck to paycheck. Just like those without an emergency fund, the percentage of people who are living paycheck to paycheck is staggering. And this often includes people earning 6 figures. So if you've been able to create some breathing room in your budget and you're not counting down the days till the next paycheck hits your bank account so you can pay your bills, chances are you're feeling a lot less stressed about your finances. You can afford to take a break. I think this one is similar to not living paycheck to paycheck, but slightly different. You can afford to take a vacation, or you could afford to miss a paycheck or two and not worry that you wouldn't be able to meet your expenses. So in other words, you can afford to take a break. That is a luxury that many people actually do not have. You value your time more. You know where your skill set lies and where your efforts are best directed to make money. You're not afraid to hire out for those tasks that are outside your wheelhouse and allow others to use their expertise rather than trying to tackle everything yourself. And finally, you have multiple streams of income. It is very hard, if not impossible, to build wealth on your income alone. At some point, you have to put your money to work making money, even if that's simply through investing in the stock market. So if you get to the point where you're creating multiple streams of income, there's a good chance you're well on your way to moving past that middle class lifestyle. What are your thoughts on what it takes to move past living that middle class lifestyle? What would your list look like? Leave your answer in a comment down below. I post new videos every single week. If you got anything at all out of this one, please give it a like. If you're new here, please consider subscribing, or if you know of someone who might get something out of this type of content, please consider sharing. I'll see you soon. Bye.